The scream cut through the night like shattered glass, sharp and desperate, stopping everyone on the sidewalk in their tracks. It wasn't loud at first, just a frightened child's voice trembling with belief rather than fear, calling out the one person she trusted more than the world itself. "Daddy, please help her." In that moment, before anyone even understood what was happening, a single father pushing a worn stroller felt something inside him snap awake. The kind of instinct that doesn't ask for permission or consequences. It was the sound of a child asking for help that made his blood rush, his heart pound, and his feet move before his mind could catch up. If you believe that kindness still matters, that ordinary people can change lives, take a second right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about second chances and quiet courage. The man's name was Daniel Hayes, though very few people knew it or cared to remember it. He was 36, with tired eyes that carried years of responsibility, grief, and resilience. Life had not been gentle with him. 5 years earlier, his wife had died suddenly from a brain aneurysm, collapsing one morning while making breakfast for their daughter, Lily. In a single moment, Daniel had lost the love of his life and inherited a role he never had time to grieve over properly. He became both father and mother, provider and protector, comfort and discipline. Since then, every decision he made revolved around Lily's small hands wrapped around his fingers, her laughter filling the silence that grief had left behind. That evening, Daniel had just finished a long shift as a night security guard at a warehouse on the edge of the city. The job barely paid enough, but it allowed him to bring Lily along when childcare fell through. He was walking her home under flickering streetlights, the air thick with exhaust and distant sirens, when he saw a small crowd forming near a convenience store parking lot. Two men stood close to a woman who had backed herself against a car, her arms raised defensively. Their posture was aggressive, careless, the kind that came from knowing no one would interfere. Lily's small fingers tightened around Daniel's sleeve, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Before Daniel could tell himself to stay out of it, Lily's voice escaped her lips, trembling but strong with belief, asking him to help the woman. That belief was heavier than any responsibility he had ever carried. Daniel left the stroller behind and stepped forward, his heart racing, his mind screaming warnings he chose to ignore. He had no weapon, no backup, and no illusion of heroism. All he had was the memory of his wife, the promise he'd made to raise Lily into a world that was safer than the one she feared, and the quiet certainty that doing nothing would haunt him forever. The confrontation unfolded fast and ugly. One man shoved him aside, laughing, not expecting resistance from a tired-looking single dad in worn shoes. The second moved in, fists clenched, breath smelling of alcohol and arrogance. Daniel didn't think about technique or strength. He thought about Lily watching, about the woman's eyes filled with panic, about all the times he'd been powerless against loss. When the first punch landed, it wasn't graceful, but it was decisive. Years of manual labor had given Daniel strength he rarely acknowledged. He moved with raw urgency, blocking, striking, pushing back with everything he had. One man went down hard against the pavement. The other stumbled, shocked by resistance he hadn't anticipated. Within seconds, the balance shifted. Sirens wailed closer in the distance, drawn by the chaos, and the two men fled, bruised pride and bodies disappearing into the shadows. The woman collapsed into tears, safe but shaken. Daniel barely registered her gratitude. His hands were trembling, adrenaline draining fast, leaving behind pain and exhaustion. He returned to Lily, who stared at him with wide eyes, not scared, but filled with awe and relief. That look cut deeper than any punch. It reminded him that his actions had consequences far beyond that moment. By the time the police arrived, statements were taken, names recorded. Daniel told the truth, careful and calm, though his voice shook. The woman insisted he had saved her life. The officers listened, nodding, noting details, and eventually let Daniel go with a warning about putting himself in danger. He walked home under the same flickering streetlights, Lily asleep in the stroller, his knuckles bruised and swelling, his mind replaying every second. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt terrified of what could have gone wrong. The next morning, reality returned quickly. Daniel woke early, made Lily breakfast, packed her small backpack, and prepared for another long day. His body ached, his ribs sore, but bills didn't wait for bravery to recover. At work, whispers followed him. Someone had posted a shaky phone video of the incident online. It showed a man stepping in, taking down two attackers with raw determination. Faces were blurred, but people talked. Daniel kept his head down, hoping it would pass like everything else. It didn't. By noon, his supervisor pulled him aside, uneasy and cautious. Corporate didn't like attention, especially not violent incidents involving employees, even off the clock. Daniel listened, nodding, feeling that familiar tightening in his chest, the fear of losing the little stability he had. He thought of Lily's school fees, the rent due next week, the fragile balance he maintained every day. He went back to work heart-heavy, expecting the worst. Across the city, in a glass tower overlooking everything Daniel struggled to survive within, a woman watched the same video on a large screen. Her name was Eleanor Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Industries, a powerful corporation that owned half the city's infrastructure, including the convenience store parking lot where the incident occurred. She wasn't watching as a businesswoman calculating risk or liability. She watched as a mother who had once lost her own daughter to violence years ago, a wound that never healed despite wealth and success. The image of a child calling out for help and a father answering without hesitation stirred something deep and unresolved within her. Eleanor ordered a full report. She wanted names, details, context. Not to protect the company, but to understand the man who stepped forward when no one else did. By late afternoon, she had Daniel's file in front of her, thin and unremarkable by corporate standards. Single father, low income, no criminal record, no recognition, just quiet endurance. The next day, Daniel was called into the office again. This time, the atmosphere felt different, tense, anticipatory. He expected termination paperwork. Instead, he was told someone was there to see him. When Eleanor Whitmore walked in, the room seemed to shrink under her presence. She was composed, elegant, powerful in a way that came from command rather than appearance. Daniel felt painfully out of place, his uniform worn, his hands still marked by bruises he hadn't bothered to hide. She didn't lecture him or praise him dramatically. She asked about Lily, about how he managed alone, about what went through his mind that night. Daniel answered honestly, without embellishment. He spoke about responsibility, about not wanting his daughter to grow up thinking fear should be ignored. His voice cracked once when he mentioned his wife, and he didn't apologize for it. Eleanor listened, truly listened. When she spoke, she acknowledged the risk he took, the courage it required, and the cost of always choosing to do the right thing in a world that rarely rewards it. She told him she had been looking for leaders, not executives, but people who acted with integrity when no one was watching. She offered him something Daniel never imagined would be possible, a full-time position in corporate security training, with benefits, flexible hours, and childcare support. Not as charity, but as recognition. Daniel struggled to breathe as she spoke. He thought of Lily's future, of nights without fear, of not having to choose between rent and groceries. He also thought of the woman in the parking lot, of the moment everything could have gone wrong. He realized that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't just change one life. It sends ripples far beyond what we can see. As Daniel accepted the offer, quietly, with gratitude he could barely contain, Eleanor added one more thing. The company would be launching a foundation in Lily's mother's name, supporting victims of street violence and single-parent families. Daniel's story would not be exploited, but it would inspire. She wanted him to be part of that mission, shaping something meaningful from pain. Near the end of this story, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe for more stories that remind us why compassion still matters. Daniel walked out of the building that day feeling lighter than he had in years, not because life was suddenly perfect, but because it finally felt seen. That evening, as he picked Lily up from school, she ran into his arms, laughing, unaware of how close their lives had come to never changing at all. He held her tightly, knowing that one whispered plea had reshaped their future. Before this story ends, please comment below and tell us what you would have done in Daniel's place, or share a moment when kindness changed your life. That night, as Daniel tucked Lily into bed, he watched her fall asleep with the same trust she had always placed in him. He understood then that heroism isn't about strength or recognition. It's about answering when someone calls for help, even when your own world feels like it's barely holding together. And sometimes, when you do, the world answers back in ways you never imagined.